All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is 6:02. We'll call this meeting of the Town Council on Tuesday, March 16th, open. Roll call, please.
Council members Dennison.
Here.
Droz.
Here.
Lombardo.
Here.
Schooler.
Here.
And Mayor Abel.
Here. We're going to start off with our Pledge of Allegiance, led by Council Member Dennison, and I will lead the invocation since that person's not here. So if you'd like to join us, please stand.
Thank you. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this evening, Lord. We thank you for the community that you've given us. We ask that you would just place a hedge of protection around each and every one of our citizens, those that are visiting our area. You would continue to watch over our resources, help us to be good stewards of what you have provided for us. And we thank you and we ask for your wisdom and guidance, and that we would be just the most gracious and wonderful neighbors that a community could have. So help us just to represent you in all that we do. We ask this in your precious name. Amen. Well, a few years ago, I had the opportunity to go and speak to the veterans, the Vietnam veterans, actually, at Copper Mountain College, and that was quite an honor. And at that time, I didn't realize, or I didn't quite know how I could relate, since I had never had the honor of serving in the military, and I didn't understand specifically what those veterans had gone through with going through the war itself and then coming home to a nation that was divided about their mission. And that was sort of the essence of my speech, is how can I relate? How can I relate to somebody who went out and risked their lives in a foreign land? How can I relate to the welcoming or the unwelcoming that they received when they came back? How could I relate to the experiences they had of losing a brother or a sister, leaving their families behind? And the answer was I really couldn't relate. But although I couldn't relate, I could be thankful for what they did and what the sacrifices they made on our behalf. So it is with a great honor that I present a proclamation today from the town of Yucca Valley, whereas the President of the United States signed into law the Vietnam Veterans Recognition Act 2017, designating March 29th of the year National Vietnam Veterans Day, and the Barstow Veterans Home, whereas has 67 Vietnam veterans in residency, proudly representing the veterans and a home for the San Bernardino County residents, whereas millions of brave Americans served our country in a conflict with courage, honor, and valor. Whereas more than 58,000 individuals made the ultimate sacrifice in Vietnam, and many thousands were wounded in combat. And whereas there are 1,677 Americans still missing and unaccounted for from the Vietnam conflict, and their families, friends, and fellow veterans still endure uncertainty concerning their fate. And whereas the 50th anniversary presents an opportunity for the people of the United States to honor and thank our Vietnam veterans for all that they have given in service to our country. Whereas on March 29th, 2021, veterans organizations, municipalities, and families across the state will hold welcome home ceremonies in honor of all veterans and Vietnam veteran-era veterans who served with honor. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the mayor and our council for the town of Yucca Valley that March 29th, 2021 is recognition as Welcome Home Vietnam Veterans. Is there anyone here who has served in the military, not necessarily Vietnam, but ever served in the military? Would you raise your hand? Thank you very much. And we'll have this proclamation on display. Thank you. We have a approval of the agenda. I would like to open up public speaking again early this evening. We'll have a second opportunity for public comments at the end of the meeting as well, just in case someone arrives late. So I'd like to make that change of the agenda, and I'd like to make that motion. Is there anyone who would second that?
Second.
Okay, motion is second. Roll call.
Councilmembers Dennison.
Yes.
Droz,
Yes.
Lombardo.
Yes.
Schooler.
Yes.
And Mayor Abel.
Yes. Consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are routine matters or formal documents covering previous town council instructions. Items are enacted by one motion and a second without separate discussion unless a member of the town council or the town staff requests dialogue on a specific item at the beginning of the meeting. Requests from the public on a consent agenda item should be filed with the town clerk. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone wishing to speak on the consent calendar or
No,
agenda?
none here, thank you.
Is there anyone here that would like to speak on just the consent calendar items? All right. Do we have a motion?
I'll move the consent agenda.
We have a motion by
And I'll second.
Councilmember Lombardo
Second.
and Dennison with a second.
Councilmembers Dennison.
Yes.
Droz,
Yes.
Lombardo.
Yes.
Schooler.
Yes.
And Mayor Abel.
Yes. Before we move to department reports, I'm going to open it up for public comment. You will be given 3 minutes to make any comments on items not on the agenda. When you are asked to speak, please give us your name and community of residence. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Inappropriate behavior which disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the meeting will result in forfeiture of your public comment privileges. The town council is prohibited by state law from taking action or discussing items not on the printed agenda. And I have a request to speak from Chris Hutchins. Didn't recognize you with your mask on.
Yes, Town Council, my name is Chris Hutchins. I'm from Yucca Valley, California. Thank you very much for letting me go early, and I appreciate that. I'm here representing the Yucca Valley Airport, and the simplest way to start my speech is that change is in the air right now. We're having a huge amount of increase in interest in the Yucca Valley Airport, in travel to and from the Yucca Valley Airport, and to be real honest, our small little general aviation airport is going to be taxed in many ways in terms of visitorship. Just recently during the Hammers, we had a very light jet, not so light, land at our airport, so these folks could go out and see their sun race, and it's very different than what it's been for the last 30 or 40 years. So our request from the Yucca Valley Airport is to maybe partnership with the city to try to acquire some kind of funds to strengthen our runway, to bring some facilities into the airport, such as restrooms and things like that normal airports have, and in any way ask for some kind of support and monetary, whether it's just meeting people or getting some kind of support from the state and local government and or federal government if we can. So that's pretty much it. It was just kind of impromptu, but again, I appreciate you letting me speak early. And I know you can't speak on it or do any kind of voting or anything like that, but we sure would appreciate the support.
Chris, can you tell me, maybe you mentioned it at the beginning, your position with the...
I've been working for the last 5 years with the Yucca Valley Airport as a consultant, and I'm doing a lot of their busy work. It's an all-volunteer board of directors, and they were doing all the work before they brought me on. I was the president of the airport, or the airport council for 5 years prior to that. So I had a little bit of background in terms of getting, forward on some of our projects. In 2007, the airport actually put together an infield plan that was approved by the state of California. We've just never been able to fund it, and that's what we're a little bit worried about. Just recently, at the last meeting that we had some folks from LA that want to fly light jets in as a taxi service. It's called a Part 134, and they want to know, how much money we needed, and our concern on that is a little bit like losing control of the airport by, having some folks come in with a little bit more financial interest than maybe community interest. So
Very good. Yeah, again, like you mentioned, we're not allowed to discuss it in any detail, but if you do have any samples or examples of partnerships between cities and agencies like yourself, please provide that to the staff.
Certainly. I
Thank
sure
you.
will. Thank you very much again.
You're welcome.
One comment is, I didn't know if Chris was leaving earlier, but I'd like to also make a meeting and discuss the item with you. There's some other background too that I have for our local community and the airport in regards. Thank you.
Very good. Is there anyone else wishing to make public comments at this time? You don't have to wait till the end. All right, Mr. Flint?
First of all, I really appreciate the work the town clerk is doing with the things I'm sending for the council. And this afternoon, or this evening, I have a little end thing to add to the end, which I'll give you a copy so you don't have to try to translate my talking here. Anyway, I've spent some time looking at Joshua Tree. Oh, Mel Flint, live on Paxton Road. I spent some time looking at Joshua trees. Those on vacant lots are generally poor looking. They're all alone, and those in residence yards generally are green, healthy, and have many new small Joshua trees growing all around them. When we built our current house in 1972, the lone mature Joshua tree in our backyard was a lone tree. At this time, 50 whatever years later, we have 14 small little Joshua trees growing around it. And the same in our front yard. The one small 1.5 foot tall Joshua tree, when we built the house, that the grader was going to cut down, that we stopped him from cutting down, now is equivalent to 5 little Joshua trees and one that's about 7 feet high. And it's the same with our neighbors. In town residence yards, near plants that are watered, they provide water to get to the Joshua trees that in a vacant lot they do not get. Humans are not enemies of Joshua trees. They help the ones that are on their property because it's something to be proud of. Residents should be rewarded and not punished for helping grow Joshua trees on their properties. Perhaps a trade for the new trees that we have helped grow and have encouraged to grow over the years might help mitigate what happens when we're putting in our hookup pipes now. I've checked with realtors and residents who own vacant land. They see lower land values and less development because of the Joshua Tree law. There'll be a lot less needed low-income housing, less commercial and industrial development, and which will mean, of course, losses to the town's budget. I have additional information from some realtors, but I might not get to that at the end. When this law was passed, 15 solar energy projects were allowed to continue as they were shovel-ready and, quote, it did not seem necessary to stop these projects, unquote. Our resident shovel-ready projects were not only necessary to put in, but were required by the state to be put in and could have been completed long before, at least up on Paxton Road, before the Joshua Tree law. But we're not allowed to complete these by other governmental bodies, even though we wanted to get it done. Part of the town has been allowed to proceed with their shovel-ready already.
Wrap it up.
Okay, shovel-ready projects without excessive Joshua Tree costs, while other parts have been refused the same opportunity, a denial of equal treatment with the board, within the town and within the state. I request the council put an item on the agenda in April to consider approaching the state body to present these several and other concerns you may have, with the goal of getting them to allow the town to have an exception in the case of our shovel-ready sewer project hookups, which they're see, I'm trying to hurry, which the state required our program of us to do. Or, and this is what I've added to this, will the council try to get one or more of the Fish and Game Commission members to come here in person on the ground to see what our residents are faced with? Maybe including a council meeting where we could all have a good exchange of views. Generally, many bureaucrats in the state have little or no idea what real people with real problems have to face because of their decisions.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Flint.
you.
Thank you. If you'd like to leave that with us, we can read the rest of that.
Yeah, well,
Oh, you don't have to, but
no, I got, you should already have those. And here's-
thank you. Is there anyone else online or here in the room that would like to speak on a non-consent item? Again, we'll have another opportunity at the end of the meeting. All right, hearing and seeing none, we're going to move on to our department reports. Thank you for your participation tonight. Update on the solid waste and recycling program.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. This evening, I'm bringing before you an update on the solid waste and recycling for the town of Yucca Valley. The recommended action before you is that the town council receive this file and update on solid waste and recycling. So with the new franchise agreement in place with Burtech and our new updated solid waste management ordinance, town staff has been very busy planning programs and community events to aid in compliance, specifically with SB 1383. This report will provide an update on the town's implementation program for SB 1383, as well as updates on other recycling facilities, events, and programs. The final regulations for SB 1383 were finally adopted by CalRecycle in November of 2020, and they are comprised of 127 pages. So if you can't sleep at night, feel free to pick it up and you'll be out just like that. Initially, these regulations were supposed to have been adopted in late 2018, early 2019, in order to allow cities and haulers the time needed to create their implementation programs. The town has been busy working with Burtech, the town's franchise hauler, on creating programs that will ensure that the town is compliant. So the town is going to be using a phased approach that highlights the important components that are necessary to be compliant under SB 1383.
Hey, Jessica, if I could interrupt, can you just go spend just a minute talking about what 1383 is, in case people don't know what that is specifically?
Oh, sure. SB 1383 is the required or mandatory organics recycling legislation that goes into effect on January 1st, 2022. There are a lot of components to it, but basically there are some thresholds that mean that the town needs to, or the state is trying to meet like a 75% target from a 2014 composting, I guess, mandate. But basically, long story short, it's organics recycling that's coming to both commercial and for residential. And it will also include food recovery programs as well. So with that being said, the town is using a phased approach to our plan. And we have 5 phases in this plan that have built-in milestones to ensure our compliance in 2022. So each phase highlights an area in the regulation that the town is required to meet. Phase 1 is program development. Phase 2 is a review of the solid waste ordinance and franchise agreement to ensure that all the programs and services that are required by the final regulations are in those. Phase 3 is public education. Phase 4 is the program implementation, which will include education and outreach and also resources for businesses and residents. And then Phase 5 is the monitoring of the program. So there are some features within the legislation that will definitely have an impact on the town. So I wanted to kind of highlight what some of those are going to be. Right now, first thing is mandatory organics recycling for all commercial and residential dwellings. That will include having a third bin or cart for organics collection at your business or at your home. It's also going to require specific bin and cart colors at some point in the legislation, and also specific labeling requirements. It also is going to include a new route to collect these organics. It's going to have new trash trucks on the road. They will be leak-proof because they're going to have nothing but organics in those. And there will be a change in the rates. There's also food recovery programs that are required. Organic waste capacity planning. We are planning to send our organics to Edom Hill, which is in Cathedral City. It is the closest composting facility that we have. Right now, the closest one to us is in Coachella, which is 104 round-trip miles away, meaning that the costs for transportation are very high. So having it in Cathedral City makes those a little bit more manageable. And Edom Hill is anticipated to be completed in 2021, later this year. There's also a requirement that the jurisdictions have to procure organic waste and use recycled paper, buy recycled paper. There's also very more specific and concise record keeping and reporting requirements. And the jurisdictions are also all required to update their solid waste ordinances. We at the town are actually ahead of the game on this step because we already updated our ordinance last year. However, we will need to review our ordinance and our franchise agreement and just make sure that all of the components that are in the final regulations that just were adopted by CalRecycle at the end of last year are included in both of those documents. Specifically, some of the things that changed in the final regulations were enforcement and monitoring regulations. So we want to make sure that all of our stuff is up to date. But other than that, we are ahead of the game from a lot of different cities. Everyone else is going to be running mad to change the ordinances this year. What happened? Sorry. Okay. Is that it? No. Okay. I thought I skipped one. Jurisdictions must also provide enforcement of their ordinances. There also are contamination audits that we have to perform. Burtech, our hauler, will be helping us with that, but the town is required to implement penalties for continued contamination. And then finally, CalRecycle can also impose penalties on the town, up to $10,000 per day for failure to comply with SB 1383 requirements, and also these penalties on jurisdictions will begin in 2024. So we have a lot of components that we are putting into place and our haulers putting into place with our franchise agreement, and also these items that they're putting into place will help us with our compliance for 1383 and all other components of recycling as well. One big thing is Burtech's new transfer station. This has been under construction, and it's anticipated that it's going to be able to accept bulky item drop-off in the fall of this year, and they expect it to be fully operational by the end of this year. This project, if you're not sure where it is, it's located on 10 acres of a 40-acre parcel located on the southwest corner of Sunny Slope Drive in Indio, right across from the High Desert Water District sewage treatment plant. This facility will include an office building, a maintenance building, and a transfer station, and the transfer station will be a 15,000 square foot enclosed facility that is permitted to accept up to 500 tons of solid waste, organics, and recyclables per day. If you haven't been by it recently, here's construction photos. This building here is going to be part of the maintenance building, and I keep hitting the wrong button, I apologize. This is the maintenance building here, and these are the offices for their staff. And then in these pictures here, this is part of the transfer station right here. So the trucks will be going up and onto the floor, and then this is the actual build out right here of the transfer station. The maintenance building is in the background. So we're excited to get that up here, because as soon as we get it up here, we can start having more events and different things like that, and it'll be a big asset to our community. I also wanted to provide an update on the household hazardous waste facility in Joshua Tree. As you know, the facility was closed the last 3 months of the year for remodeling and upgrades, and that facility is now open. It reopened in January, and it's open 2 Saturdays per month now, the first and the third Saturday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. until August, or through August. And then starting September, they will resume their normal schedule of being open every third Saturday of the month from 9 to 1. The Household Hazardous Waste Facility in Joshua Tree accepts household and auto batteries, fluorescent light bulbs, sharps and needles, motor oil, used oil filters, antifreeze paint. They also accept e-waste, appliances, different things like that. So for more information, if you're not sure what can be taken there, please visit greensb.net or contact them by calling 1-800-OILYCAT. That's OILYCAT. And these are some before and after pictures of the household hazardous waste remodel. As you can see, they just had a slight little, kind of like a carport type thing, and they've built a large substantial structure that will help provide shade from the elements and will stand up to the wind and all of that for their facility out there. They also did some repaving and some remarking of the pavement. So the town also has some planned events for town residents. After a year of not being able to have any events at all, we're excited to be able to provide some for our residents. The first one is going to be a drive-through household hazardous waste collection event, and we're also going to be having a community cleanup event. So the details for both of these are that we are going to be collaborating with San Bernardino County Fire Department to host the drive-through household hazardous collection event. And that will be on Saturday, April the 24th from 9 to 1. And it will be in the north parking lot of the community center, just right outside here. And we are still working on this program, so details will soon be available on the town's website, on our Facebook pages, and also flyers will be available at Town Hall. We are also collaborating with Burtech to provide a community cleanup event, which will be held on Saturday, May 15th from 8 to noon. That will be located in the vacant lot, which is east of the Public Works Yard on Business Center Drive. Again, same place as it was held last time. And I have to give a shout out to Mr. Don Lander, who has allowed us to use his vacant lots again for this event. So thank you, Don. This is a quick site map of the general layout. If you notice, this is Business Center Drive right along here. Mr. Landers also owns a property that's down in this area. You can't see it. But basically, cars would be coming in off of Yucca Trail, will loop around here and stage, and then they would enter onto the property along here and down and around. And then they have like access to the different front loaders that are going to be there for their different materials, such as electronics, tires, metal, all kinds of things like that. And Burtech will be providing roll-off containers, front loader, trash trucks, and staff to assist with this event. And our public works staff is also a huge benefit to this event. They help us out a lot by working the event, operating tractors, helping people with all of their materials, running water trucks, and other heavy equipment. In the past, these events have been very successful, and basically we have collected an average of a little over 45.5 tons of trash, just under 6 tons of tires, a little over 3 tons of e-waste, and about almost 8 tons of metal. If you notice, in 2019, we had a huge jump in metal for some reason at our last event. So we're planning, maybe that's going to happen again. We're not quite sure. Every year it's a little bit different. But they're very popular. Also wanted to advise the council that as part of our new franchise agreement, last year the town implemented curbside pickup of Christmas trees. And that was very successful. Burtech reported that almost a half a ton of Christmas trees was picked up curbside and were able to be recycled. So we're really glad to see that some of our new programs with our new franchise agreement are working and the citizens are liking them. So we hope to have even more success next year. And then as a summary, staff will keep the council apprised of new programs as they are developed while working with Burtech and the Mojave Desert and Mountain JPA. Details for the events will be posted on the town's website and Facebook pages, and flyers will be available for pickup at Town Hall. And staff will continue to monitor and track the costs associated with administering the necessary programs for compliance with SB 1383, and we may return to council at a later time with specific recycling policies or updates or possibly amendments to our documents, along with any accompanying cost recovery structure in order to ensure compliance with the required state laws. Again, the recommendation before you is that the town council receive and file this update on solid waste and recycling, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have following public comment.
Thank you very much. Anyone here in the room would like to make a public comment on the presentation of the solid waste and recycling program? Seeing none, is there anyone online that would like to speak on this item? All right. We'll bring it back to council for questions and comments. Go ahead.
You mentioned that there's I don't know if it's a requirement or an idea that the town is going to purchase recycled paper, did you say, and compost or something?
Yeah.
Do we know how we'll use that or how that's going to be accomplished? Do we have a need for those things?
We are working on that. The town's required to start buying their recycled paper. We have to determine how much we need to buy, I guess. And then for the compost, yes, the town will have to purchase compost, but we do have a plan right now that we're working with Burtech, where they would be able to most likely set aside the amount that is equivalent to what we would need to purchase and sell it on our behalf to the farmers that are down the hill. So we're working on that plan right now. That's part of all the plans that are in place right now, or that we're working on right now.
Very good.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. Thank you for the update. I've been following it quite a bit for the last few years. But as you mentioned, two big players that we benefit in our community from is Burtech. I appreciate them with their new transfer station and working with us to meet the needs for organic waste. And the other part was I took advantage of the first day back for HHW. So the hazardous waste event in Joshua Tree, the new facility is great. So for those of you that have been gathering or saving your waste oil, paint, batteries, things like that, that sometimes get set outside and the containers can degrade, it's a good opportunity now to get back out there on the first and third Saturdays in Joshua Tree. It was very quick. I've been going for years, but the new facility provides better throughput. They had a great staff. I came right in. They took care of the paperwork, and I was in and out of there literally. There were probably 6 cars in front of me, and I don't think I was there longer than about 5 minutes. So it worked out really well. I'd encourage the community to take advantage.
The one concern I had is talking about a cost or fee increase for the recycling program. I would like to, we don't have the green waste like they would in other communities. Orange County has a lot of vegetation, grass clippings, those types of things. So I would imagine the demand of green waste would be much higher there, and weekly pickup would be necessary. I'm wondering if, to help keep the costs down to our residents, and also the cost for Burtech to run another truck, is that the requirement for the green waste could be every other Saturday as well, or the first and third of the month. Is that a way we could possibly approach it?
Possibly. The problem with green waste, though, is you're talking about food scraps, and in our hot summer heat, you can really have some issues with things baking in a trash can for 2 weeks at a time. 1 week is almost unbearable, too. But we are working on some plans with Burtech as to seeing if there's ways that we can provide, perhaps there are some waivers that are allowed for organics, depending on, if there's proof that not enough organic material is created at the residence or at the business. And so we're looking into any potential ways that we can provide waivers to people. Any other cost-saving measures, we're definitely looking at that. Because, yeah, we are aware that, we don't want to have to raise rates for commercial businesses that have been struggling, especially due to COVID, and then also same with the residents as well, people who have not had jobs in the last year or so. So we are very much aware, and we have also reiterated this over and over and over again to Cal Recycle, stating that, you've put this legislation into place to start January 1st, 2022. We just had a massive pandemic over the last year and a half. Give us a break. Maybe have it start a little bit later. Can we work with you on that? And so I know that there's some stuff happening with like the League of California Cities and things like that, trying to go to Cal Recycle and seeing if there is a way that they can maybe push some of their starting thresholds. And so that might be a possibility, we'll see, but until we hear that, we have to still go and stick with the January 1st, 2022 start date. But we are definitely very mindful of any sort of rate increase, and we will do our very, very best to keep it low.
Yeah, please remind Burtech of that, because we just entered a brand-new franchise agreement, and of course, the amount of people participating now in trash service has gone up quite a bit, and they're driving those vehicles that probably, well, they could be added some mileage, but for the most part, they were still traveling past a lot of empty homes and not picking up trash and not getting paid for it. Now they've got paying customers all up and down the street. So I really would like them to really take in consideration, because the fee increase is what scares me, the cost involved.
Just to add on to that, Mayor, we do want to make sure that the public understands that the 1383 regulations are primarily dealing with food waste, whether that's generated at the residence or whether that's generated at a business. So it's much less focused on any type of green waste activity, which we don't have a whole lot of here. But this is statewide regulations that are being driven with the primary objective of reduction of greenhouse gases. And so it's a policy conversation that Sacramento has had and has encapsulated through their Cal Recycle regulations. So the handling of the material, you can think of food waste versus your solid waste that goes to the landfill. The requirement that the food waste be treated completely differently than any of the other waste. So you have your recycled waste now that needs to be separated through one route. You have your landfill, and then now this is basically, it's almost better to think of it as wet waste. So that's what they're calling it, is wet waste. So you'll have this separate container at your house, has a separate truck, goes to a separate place, and is completely treated differently. And so there's significant cost to that. That is not as easy as just incorporating it into your other rates. So we're going to look at how and what flexibility we have when we look at those rates. There will definitely be a different rate structure in place once 1383 is in place. It would almost bankrupt the hauler if they're put into a place where you have a whole different waste stream without any cost recovery. And the town certainly wouldn't be in a position to be able to cover that cost for the residents either. So that's a little bit down the road, and it's a little bit premature based on the timing yet. We don't know exactly, while the state guideline is January 1 of 2022, we're still working on the ability to even have a place to take it and making sure that is in the works. And so we want to make sure that the residents know that this is something that is being driven by state policy on climate change. And that's the genesis behind all of these regulations at this point. Quite clearly, that's the goal of the state, and it's stated as much in the regulations. So just want to make sure that that's clear, that it's not necessarily just green waste, but it's really wet waste that's coming out of both residents and businesses together.
So it wouldn't be mixed with green waste?
Not sure how that's mixed together or not, but the real focus is on the wet waste.
It is, yeah, and we will be mixing the green waste with the wet waste or the food waste because Burtech's facilities can handle them together. That's how they do it down below, like in Palm Springs, Rancho Mirage. They've had the organics recycling down in those areas for quite some time. So, but we will definitely work with Burtech, and there will be education to everybody as to what can go into what bin and so on. So we're finalizing all that stuff right
All
now.
right. And yeah, you make a very good point about that, sitting around too long at your trash
Yeah,
cans. I know how
yeah.
that is when I miss trash days sometimes in summer. Yes.
They're going to compost the wet waste?
Yes. Yeah, that is the whole goal, is that no more food waste, green waste that goes to the landfill, like as Curtis was saying, to prevent the greenhouse gases. So now all of that needs to go into a composting facility that will be made into compost and recycled.
All right, what a lovely topic. Okay, so we will receive and file that report if there are no other questions, and we'll move on to item number 8.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. We have a presentation for the irrigation water use reduction study, sport fields, and turf analysis. The recommended action is to amend the fiscal year 2021 general fund budget to appropriate $12,000 from the unassigned general fund reserves, authorize the town manager and town attorney to execute professional service contract with RHH Landscape Architects and Planners in the amount of $41,700, and establish a contingency fund in the amount of $5,300, and authorize the town manager to expend this fund to complete the study. The study description, the study will provide, the approach is going to be a comprehensive analysis of irrigation water use on the existing 19 acres of turf that we have in the town. The study will determine methods and recommend alternatives with the goal of reducing the irrigation water use. To get to this study, it was based on the increasing water rates. You can see in the left side of the presentation the water rates, how they are increasing per year at the 3% rate from HDWD, and also the town facilities expansions that the parks that we have, Community Center, Macris, Brem 1, Brem 2, Tri-Valley Little League recently added 4 acres, and the parks without sport field like Essex and Paradise Park. Based on the increase of water rates and the town facility expansion, you have an increase in long-term cost. You can see there that is in a red number in 2021 that we have a projected water irrigation cost of $247,000, almost $250,000. And in 7 years, if you go to the table in 2027, 2028, you will have $300,000 of irrigation cost. The irrigation water use reduction study will evaluate the water use reduction with the existing system, excuse me, evaluate the natural turf alternatives, so bring a different type of turf with shorter dormancy, appropriate with, for the time climate conditions. It's going to evaluate the removal or conversion of unused passive turf to areas with low water use plants or decomposed granite. Evaluation of the water-saving technologies, such as water retention products. Evaluation of fertigation system. This is a process that combines fertilization with irrigation, and the conversion from natural turf to artificial turf. At the end, the study will have an opinion of probable cost for the implementation of these alternatives and their maintenance versus the town operational budget and projected water consumption expenses. Also, we included in this study the analysis and the evaluation for sports fields conversions from natural turf to artificial turf. In that case, this evaluation will have the capital outlay per site, the life cycle of the artificial turf, the equipment that the town needs to purchase to maintain that artificial turf, the staff time reduction for maintenance, and the cost effectiveness of conversion. The fiscal impact is the fiscal year budget has allocated $35,000 for this study. The proposal came a little higher in $41,700. We are asking for a contingency of $5,300, so the total irrigation water use reduction study will be a total of $47,000. So staff is asking to amend the fiscal year 2021 general fund budget to appropriate $12,000 for the completion of the study. So the recommended action is to amend the general fund, appropriating the $12,000, authorize the town manager and town attorney to sign the contract with RHA Landscape Architects and Planners in the amount of $41,700, and establish a contingency fund for $5,300 to complete the study. That concludes my report, and I will answer any question you may have following public comments.
All right, we'll move to public comments. Anyone in the room wishing to make a comment or ask questions about this study or this proposal? Anyone online wishing to speak? All right, we'll bring it back to the council. I have a quick question. Are we limiting this to sports fields, and if we are, why? In other words, if we're trying to cut back the water usage on the town's behalf, I would think the study would want to go beyond that and study all of our turf and where we could cut back and maybe go zero-scaping in some parts, so we eliminate the need for
No,
turf.
it is including all the turf, unused, we call it unused and passive turfs, the ones that are not sport fields. So a sport field, the only part that we are doing in a sport field, the extra analysis that we are doing in a sport fields is the transition from natural turf to artificial turf. The other ones are going to be desert landscape or
So they are
decomposed
going to
land.
analyze all of our
Yes.
present turf
The
that the town
19,
owns?
the 19 acres, yes.
Okay, well, that's good, because I was thinking if we eliminate some turf from having to be, changed over, that might be the best and prudent way to cut our costs. Councilmember Rhodes?
I'm just wondering, RHA Landscape Architects, I'm sure they have a lot of experience, but I think it would be pertinent to make sure they have experience in a desert environment. I mean, I don't know if they have only done things in Orange County and LA County, or if they've ventured out to the desert. Because with the windstorm we had just yesterday, I mean, you saw how much sand blew all over. So how does artificial turf react, and how do you clean that up in a sandy environment when you have a big windstorm like that? So I just want to make that comment. I think it's something to
Just as background, RHA Landscape Architects, based out of Riverside, California. RHA has worked for the town on many previous projects in the town park, so their experience is very broad and far-ranging, and they do very well understand the desert environment that we're situated in.
Okay, well, thank you.
On the other hand, we contacted the school district. We contacted the high school because they have just turned their sport field into artificial turf. It was a different issue. It was not water reduction. They have a risk issue when the water, with the leveling of the fields and everything, according to the sports that they were playing. So we contact them, and the maintenance that the artificial turf needs. We were looking at different cities also, and they have a new system that implemented that is, we reduce even the water usage during the year for the maintenance of the sport field. So we are looking at different alternatives, trying to reduce the irrigation water use.
Thank you, Armando. And Shane.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment on the item. Thank you very much for that briefing. It is the most valuable commodity I think that we always have is water. Everything else we can import easily, whether it's gas, electricity, telecommunications. But water is a little more difficult, requires a lot of infrastructure, and we don't have an endless source of it out here. So I appreciate looking at this item. I think conservation is very important to us, and looking at the opportunities to reduce that water consumption is an important move. It'll help us make a good decision on the direction we want to go. I do appreciate turf. I think there's a lot of purposes for it in certain areas, but on larger areas, the high school was a great example that you just talked about. Heavily used field, it requires a lot of maintenance, a lot of water. but the entire town is growing and consuming more and more of our resources. I think this is a good step to see if we have an opportunity to reduce that consumption. So thank you for bringing it forward. With that, I would like to make the recommendation to move the item.
All right, if there's no other discussion, we'll look for a second.
Second.
Councilmembers Dennison.
Yes.
Droz.
Yes.
Lombardo.
Yes.
Schooler.
Yes.
And Mayor Abel.
Yes. Thank you for the presentation. We'll move on to item number 9, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. We have another presentation that is for the award of professional engineering design service for Onaga Trail Pedestrian Improvement Project Design, Town Project 7005-2020, and ATP 5466-025. The recommendation is that the Town Council adopt a resolution amending the fiscal year 2021 Special Revenue Fund budget, award a contract for professional engineering design services to KOA Corporation for the design and preparation of the construction documents for Onaga Trail Pedestrian Improvement Project in the amount of $155,995, and authorize the town manager, town attorney, and the mayor to sign all necessary documents to complete the project. The project description, as it was introduced to you in several opportunities, the project is located on Onaga Trail between Acoma Trail and Grand Avenue. It is divided in two segments due to existing constraints to meet the general plan designation. Both segments would have full width pavement, curb gutter, handicap ramps, and sidewalk on both sides of Onaga Trail, and this would result in sidewalks on both sides of Onaga Trail between Sage Avenue and Acoma Trail. The general plan designation for Onaga is considered an arterial with 4-lane divided, requiring a 100-foot right-of-way along the entire length from Kickapoo to Palomar. The existing constraints are that Onaga does not contain the necessary right-of-way for the widening to what is required in the general plan designation, and that Council in September of 2017 approved the preliminary project design concept that does not implement the general plan right-of-way requirements. The first segment is Onaga between Acoma and Church Street, and that will be improved to a local road standard of 60-foot right-of-way. There will be no additional right-of-way that could be required, and the improvement can be constructed with minimal impact to the existing residents. The second segment is Onaga Street, is between Church Street and Grand Avenue. It's going to be improved within the existing 80-foot right-of-way. There's going to be 4 lanes of traffic, a painted median with turn pockets, no on-street parking, and no shoulder, and only 6 houses westerly of Palm Avenue that would be affected by the prohibition of parking on the street. Staff did an evaluation. On January 13, we received 5 proposals for this project. 2 were non-responsive, 3 were evaluated, and KOA was the one that was more qualified for this project. So the funding that we have for this project, the funding allocated on the fiscal year 2021, it totals $134,970 that are Measure I, ATP grant, and sorry, there is a mistake. There is a Fund 800. That is the Capital Projects Reserve. The original project budget funded through ATP was considered that it was going to cost $971,000, including all the phases, environmental, design, and construction, as you can see in the table there. We are in the second phase, the design, that is plans and specifications as estimate, that was estimated in $60,000, with $48,000 from the ATP and $12,000 from local funds. We updated the estimate project cost, and the construction cost right now, instead of being $906,000, is going to be $186,000 in updating the construction cost from 2016 to 2021. And the total project cost will be around $1,700,000. So by updating this construction cost and estimated project cost, we have that the engineering service in $156,000 exceed what we have allocated in the fiscal year budget 2021, and also exceed what was approved by the state funding level of $60,000. And also represent 13% of the construction cost that is within the standards, industry standards. So additional local matching funds in the amount of $17,000 need to be allocated for the design of the project, increasing Fund 524 Measure I allocation to $85,000. So the amended budget will be a total of $156,000 with $85,000 from Measure I, $52,000 for ATP, and $19,000 from the Capital Projects Reserve Fund 800. So the recommendation in front of Council is to adopt the resolution amending the fiscal year budget 2021 Special Revenue Fund budget, award a contract for professional engineering services to KOA Corporation for the design of Onaga Trail pedestrian improvement projects, and authorize the town manager, town attorney, and the mayor to sign all necessary documents to complete the project. That concludes my report, and I will answer any question you may have after following public comments.
All right, quite a big project. Anyone here wishing to make a comment about the Onaga Trail Safety Improvement Project? Anyone online? All right. I think everyone understands the amount of traffic that's on Onaga and the need for improved safety. I have a couple questions, and forgive me for maybe asking something that was already explained. Originally, we were desiring to have a 100-foot right-of-way all the way from one end of Kickapoo all the way to Palomar and so forth. Is this project sort of phasing in where we want to eventually go, or is it completely, are we completely giving up on the idea of 100-foot right away?
No, sir. The general plan designation remains in place. And I think, as all of you recall from driving on Onaga Trail, especially the segment from Kickapoo to approximately Church Street, that part of the community started developing in the 40s and 50s. You've got many homes that are built very, very close to the existing roadway. Long-term, and as we had discussed back in 2017 to the council at that time, long-term, how Onaga Trail is going to be widened and the ramifications to property owners along that segment of Onaga Trail is going to be a very, very large undertaking. But is the widening of Onaga Trail necessary over and for the long-term growth of the community? Yes, that remains in place. The timing of that will depend upon growth in the community overall, as well as in that quadrant of the town. We don't see the widening to 4 lanes, the necessity to widening to 4 lanes probably in the next 15 to 20 years, and therefore the recommendations bringing forward these grant funds to implement the pedestrian safety improvements within the existing right-of-way that we have. But again, long-term implementation of that general plan designation will be necessary when the community reaches those different stages of growth.
And can we acquire the right-of-way of the 100 feet at this point, so then when the community grows, we'll already have the right-of-ways already established? Or do we have those right-of-ways already under our belt?
No, right-of-way acquisition will be required. So through the town's adopted development code, at the time of building permits, staff obtains right-of-way where that is possible, but is an overall program for right-of-way acquisition going to be necessary long-term for Onaga Trail? Yes, an overall program will be necessary, and that means funding.
So that would be a separate issue, separate
Yes.
funding down the road.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right, and then I also see in our community, they're very active, or Southern Cal Edison's very active in replacing poles and so forth. When they get to a point where they're going to move poles or replace poles, that would be an opportune time to get those issues taken care of. So I don't know how we plan that. I'm not a planner or developer like you are.
Well, the Edison is going to work within the existing easements that they have today when they do pole replacements. So they do not move forward with future acquisition of utility easements for widening or those types of things. So they do pole replacement within their existing easements. Utility companies depend upon cities or counties primarily for the acquisition of public easements, and council will recall from seeing whether it's on tract maps or other legal documents where those right-of-way or those grants of easements specifically state for public roadway and utility purposes. So Edison, like many utility companies, depend upon cities and counties for the acquisition of those easements.
Okay, very good.
I have a question. On the right-of-way issue, is there the right amount of space on one side of the street, or both sides of the street are impacted?
Both sides of the street are impacted on Onaga Trail
So there's
between...
no way to build out one half to
No,
the
sir.
width that you want? Okay,
No, sir.
got it.
And will these include curb and gutter?
Yes, this project includes curb, gutters, and sidewalks on both sides.
Wonderful. What a safety advantage we'll have.
So this has been a big project for the town for quite some time, and since I've been on the council, it's been discussed and brought forward. And so I appreciate the progress getting to this point where we're finally looking at completing the project. There's a huge need. I don't know if everyone knows, but in our community, the only road that doesn't intersect either Highway 247 or 62 that travels all the way from the west at Kickapoo to the east, Palomar, almost end to end in our main part of town, is Onaga. And so it's heavily trafficked. We have 3 primary schools on that street, along with churches that have schools too. We have our high school, which is the only high school on this end of the basin. We've got Yucca Valley Elementary School, well established in that west end of town, and then Onaga, once again, a high-capacity school. So the traffic has been difficult to navigate with the growth of the community so far. So this is something that's needed. We're giving an opportunity for the public to use different modes of transportation. We're primarily trying to encourage pedestrian traffic again. Kids need safe routes to school. We've been working diligently on the west end of town and around the high school. You've seen those sidewalk programs come forward in the last few years. This is another major piece that'll tie these things together. So it's very important to the community. Even if you don't have children in schools and you don't go to those areas, believe me, it's very welcomed to others that do. So thank you for the work from staff so far. I look forward to seeing progress.
Yeah, and that's a very dangerous, it goes east to west. So when the sun's low in the evenings or in the morning, visibility is very, very compromised. And people walking or running or cycling, anything, it's just very, very dangerous in its present state. This widening project will not allow a bike lane, designated bike lane on one side or the other with this?
There's a portion where no parking is allowed on the street, so we have that constraint. It's possible that some form of bike route or bike lane could be included. The difficulty, though, is there's no connections to go beyond on this one segment. So we can look at that issue, but there's no connecting points east or west for those bike lanes to continue.
Right, I just think between schools or on their way to school.
Understood.
Yeah, and then also I've seen some communities where they only build a sidewalk on one side of the street to utilize the widening even more on the other. And I don't know if that's a poor design for something like this, or was that mainly just in a little residential area where they do that?
No, I would not refer to it as a poor design. Unfortunately, though, just that 6-foot width of that sidewalk still does not give us any amount of right-of-way to really make any significant changes.
Okay, very good. All right, well, we're excited about this. As you said, we've been talking about this for a long, long time, so.
I'll move the recommendation that the town council adopts the resolution amending the special revenue fund budgets and award the contract to KOA Corp. For the design and preparation of bid-ready construction documents for Onaga Trail pedestrian improvement project.
I will second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmembers Dennison,
Yes.
Droz,
Yes.
Lombardo,
Yes.
Schooler,
Yes.
and Mayor Abel.
Yes. Item number 10, please. Staff report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This item is related to the authorization of award a contract to True North Research for an update to the town's community livability survey for a not-to-exceed amount of $28,610. Town Council will recollect that as part of your strategic planning efforts, budgeting efforts, and your entire planning cycle, one of the primary activities that we always look for is early on in that process, going out to the community and identifying a number of different aspects that we can test with the community, whether it's identifying key issues of concerns for residents, measuring residents' overall satisfaction with town services, collecting additional background or demographic data that's important for us to understand for residents' perceptions, needs, interests, and then comparing that data from each survey year that we do. So right now, our cycle is about once every 2 years, and then we take this input that you get from the survey process, comes back to you in the summer, comes back in a summary form, which then provides the basis for the community outreach that we do as your initial step in strategic planning, and ultimately the town's updated strategic plan, which you'll do in the fall of this year, leading to your next 2-year budget cycle. The recommendation is to utilize the existing vendor that we have for the past 2 years, True North. Dr. McClarney's well-versed in what we've done here in the past, has a number of data points that we look at year over year, as well as leaving an opportunity for us to be able to craft certain issues that we want to test that may be different from each individual survey cycle. And so based on some of the comments that the council has received from the public, whether it's related to quality of life, short-term vacation rentals, things like that, gives us an opportunity to test certain concepts with the public and identify what it is that we want to include in that next upcoming strategic plan process. So again, the recommendation is to award the contract to True North. The last part of the recommendation is if the council is interested in participating in developing potential questions or ideas, then certainly you're welcome to establish an ad hoc committee. You've done that in the past. I think we did that for the first study. We did not do it for the second study, so it's really up to the pleasure of the council. Complete staff report, and we'd be happy to answer questions after public comment, Mayor.
Any questions on the livability study, survey and update? All right, seeing and hearing none, we'll bring it back to the council. Any questions or discussions? Is anyone interested in forming an ad hoc committee? I think that it's not necessary, but if somebody feels moved to be part of an ad hoc committee.
As we go through this process, just so you're aware, we would obviously provide you sample lists of questions that we would have in all of the council's boxes as we develop it anyways. So you
Okay.
have
It'd be nice to kind of just have an oversight, just to see what the questions are, but I reserve the ad hoc committee at this time.
Yeah, go right ahead.
I think it's a great project, and I've been involved in the ad hoc and the strategic planning, which we all have in the past. And I like the format that we've used. It's consistent, and so I don't think there's any discussion or need, from my point of view, of an ad hoc, for myself anyway, I like the framework that we've used in the past, and I feel comfortable using that same framework again, so we can, look at apples to apples kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd just like to be able to review the questions before they're
Absolutely, that part,
finalized.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So is there a motion to award the contract for the livability surveys?
I'll make the motion as recommended by staff.
Okay,
I'll second.
we have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Councilmembers Dennison,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
Lombardo,
Yes.
Schooler,
Yes.
and Mayor Abel.
Yes. We'll move on to item number 11.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, this item is related to the direction to staff, proposed direction to staff to prepare an ordinance changing the town's municipal code section related to town council member monthly compensation to $620, bring the ordinance back for council consideration, introduction, and ultimate passage. You'll recollect that your council member compensation is set by the town ordinance, is currently at $557 per month. I think it's important to understand a couple of items related to this. Number one, this council, as well as prior councils, have always adopted a council compensation policy that's really intended to try and cast the widest net for future council candidates in an attempt to remove any financial barriers that other folks that want to serve may serve. Some folks don't have the ability to get out of work as easy as other folks, and so it becomes a financial burden and then becomes a barrier for them to be able to serve. And so this is one way that the town can mitigate some of those impacts, promote an equitable and a diverse pool of candidates for potential service. Secondly, any change that the council entertains by government code does not take place for the current council members until after your next municipal election. So any change that's contemplated and ultimately adopted by the council through your ordinance would not be effective until essentially 2 years from now, until 2023, January of 2023. There's two different alternatives for you, actually three. One is to leave the council compensation unchanged. The second would be to adjust it by the state maximum of 5% per year. And then the third, which is the staff recommendation, is to have an incremental change that's aligned with your current CPI factor that we use for all other compensation matters. That's the recommendation before you this evening. And if desired, then we would prepare that ordinance, bring it back to you at your next council meeting. That compensation change would go from your existing amount of $557 per month to $620 per month. Lastly, staff would just add that our preference, while we brought this back to you 2 years ago, the council at that time chose not to move forward with any change in compensation. From staff's perspective, incremental changes on a regular basis are more advantageous than trying to catch up if you leave it unchanged for a significant number of years. So that concludes staff comments, and be happy to answer questions after public comment.
So the staff's recommending a $63 increase as proposed, okay.
If you're a mathematician, yeah.
Well, I did the math, old school. Anyway, we'll bring it up to public comments on town council compensation review. Anyone have a opinion or questions as presented tonight? All right, seeing and hearing none, we'll bring it back to the council for discussion.
I would like to make one comment on it. I think the town manager made a good comment in there where he talked about casting a net. And earlier this year, which was something that was started last year, I'm active in the COG, which is the Council of Governments for the San Bernardino County. And the Council of Governments is just a large group of government agencies that look at things that they have in common. And so that's pretty good. And we try and keep it in alignment with the county vision statement. And that includes things like education, economic health, community health, public safety, housing, recreation, arts, culture, and of course, a lot of talk tonight, our infrastructure. We have the same needs and concerns as other communities. And one of the things that we started this year, which I'm a member on, is an equity ad hoc committee under the Council of Governments. because all communities kind of have the same vision and goals when it comes to equity. Some of the things they're looking at doing is like removing barriers from people getting involved, and this is one of them that we talked about tonight. You know, it allows them to have opportunities. It kind of breaks that down for residents, so they have the potential to have more opportunities, because there is something that can help them if they choose to get engaged. It's not a burden on them or their families, because it does take their time. And it kind of helps, and one of the things we talked about was or advancing justice and equity and diversity, and, I said earlier, inclusion. Those are all important things today to a lot of people, and it needs to be addressed. So this was one tool I think that we could use as a community to remove some of that maybe financial burden, if that is a barrier, and allow others to do it. Now, this recommendation today doesn't affect, like myself, in my term. This is for a couple of years down the road, when my term is over. But it does possibly give people the opportunity to think about it now instead of at the last minute. And I hope others do. If they want to be involved in their community, this is one opportunity, not just our community. Remember, the Council of Governments is the whole county. So if you live here, near or far, it's something that may be applied throughout many communities and something you can consider. So I just wanted to let people know kind of what we're doing, and I think what he was talking about, casting a larger net.
Thank you.
I think it's also valid to consider the idea of little, small incremental raises over time, as opposed to one big jump after not having changed. It was 2017 since we raised it last, and that would just put the burden farther down the line, and it would look like a bigger jump later. So I'm in favor of it.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I'll move it forward.
And I'll second.
Motion is second. We'll take a roll call.
Councilmembers Dennison,
Yes.
Droz,
Yes.
Lombardo,
Yes.
Schooler,
Yes.
and Mayor Abel.
Yes. So that's a $63 increase from 2017 to 2023?
It's basically, well, it's for the last 4 years. Remember, the action you take today doesn't become effective until after the 2022 election, so it'll be January of 2023. So it's basically a 4-year coverage.
Okay. All right. We'll move on to future agenda items. Any council member wanting to have an item brought forward in the future?
I would like to know more about the airport situation and why it would be a benefit to our community to have a more vibrant airport. Am I allowed to?
You're allowed to ask to put that on the future agenda item.
I would support you in that move to discussions with the board, airport board.
I agree, because I know the airport does not have any fueling capabilities either. Planes have to fly there with fuel and fly back somewhere else, so I think that's a bigger issue, though. I don't think they're even thinking.
Yeah,
about
that could be a very big issue of,
Yes.
anyway, we won't discuss it now.
We would be happy to look at that. This is the first that we've heard of any request this evening during public comment. Staff was not made aware of any of those comments prior to this. So it will take us some time to reach out to the individuals, understand a little bit of the background, understand what context and what framework that should be brought forward to the council, but we'll put that on our work plan.
All right. Thank you.
Can I just make one comment? Some of the prompting of this was as a result of some monies, I believe, that are going to be made available or are available to rural or small town airports in the new stimulus bills. This is the second time I've heard of money being available, and I know that our airport has kind of fallen into disrepair because of the costs of new tarmac and that sort of thing. And the fuel and that sort of things would be useful. And not having a bathroom, I wasn't aware that they don't have a restroom there. Seems kind of one of the big deficits. And
All right, we'll have an opportunity to get into that once we bring it back. So any other agenda items, future agenda? All right, We'll move on to public comments. This is your opportunity. You'll have 3 minutes in which to make public comments. Any inappropriate behavior which disturbs or disrupts or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the meeting will result in a forfeiture of your public comment privileges. The town council is prohibited by state law from taking actions or discussing items not on the printed agenda. If you come forward, please make sure you state your name and community of residence. Anyone here tonight wanting to make a public comment on anything not on tonight's agenda? Is it a different item, sir? Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Flint.
I'm sorry. It's in regard to the Vietnam Veterans Day. I'm the Vice President of the Morongo Basin Car Club Roadrunners, which is the organized car club in the area we have meetings and bylaws and liability insurance and so on. We've been supporting the VFW in Joshua Tree, and I realize that's not Yucca Valley. It used to be a VFW in Yucca Valley, one in 29 and one in Joshua Tree. And for whatever reason, the only one left now for the veterans of foreign wars is in Joshua Tree. We put on 6 months ago, we put on a car show for the guys and drove them around a little bit. Had one guy that was in World War II, so getting pretty old and so on. But anyway, what I wanted to mention was they have opened their kitchen every Wednesday morning, noon, I should say, every noon, 11 to 1. They have various Mexican plates and stuff, so if you're over in that vicinity, help them out. They need all the help they can get, and everybody would appreciate any help they can get for lunch. Thank you.
Very good. I'm sure a lot of people think you have to be a member to go in and eat, but that's not the case. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Flint. Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone online wishing to speak tonight? All right, well, thank you. We'll bring it back to our staff reports now and comments.
Thank you, Mayor. I see we have Assistant Chief Tuttle. You have anything for us this evening, Chief? Thank you for coming out this evening and spending some time with us.
My pleasure. No, I don't really have any updates. Everything's been pretty much business as usual, so I'd be happy to answer any questions, though.
You didn't happen to bring a fire station with you, did you?
No, but we're still working on that.
Okay.
All right.
Well, very good. Well, we appreciate all of the efforts everyone makes out there on our behalf and so forth. Have you seen any increase in calls within the last year with the vacation rental and more people visiting the area?
No, not necessarily. I'm sure we're seeing more calls, but
Nothing that...
it's really spiking that we can see.
Okay, well, very good. Thank you for coming tonight. I hope the commute wasn't too far for you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Lieutenant Walker, you have anything for us this evening?
Yes, good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. Not much by way of an update, but the Sheriff's Department would like the council and the community to know that on Monday, this coming Monday, the 22nd, we'll be doing some training at Joshua Springs. So you'll probably see an increase in deputies, law enforcement, fire, probably see our helicopter up there. So let you know, it's a training evolution with the faculty and students there. So if you see a lot of activity up there, that's what it is.
That's what's going on.
Okay.
Terrific. Anything else, Lieutenant?
No, sir.
All right. Shane, you have anything? Okay. Council, just a couple of quick updates. Wanted to circle back, let you know that the San Bernardino Department of Public Health had their vaccination event here, their first one, on Friday. They had approximately 200 doses to administer to seniors and others in the community that were set up by appointment. So that went through pretty well. I was educated on that process and how it works and the number of support staff that are required to deliver that event was almost unbelievable. And so I think the good news that we heard out of that was a couple of things. One of my questions was, is the supply chain ramping up so that supplies won't be as much of an issue? And the answer was yes, supply chains are ramping up and there seems to be quite a bit of supply. Their bigger challenge is having the infrastructure, whether that's places or more importantly, people, to be able to administer the vaccinations. And so their fleet of LVNs, RNs, a lot of these people coming from out of state to work under contract to make these types of clinics and drive-through events successful. So the follow-up to that event will be on April 2nd, I believe, here in the Yucca room. Very self-contained operation where they set up, tear down, clean on their own, everything is taken care of. And so we did have our staff here and we appreciate their help, but for the most part they were able to do that independently. As you know, the county moved into the red tier on Sunday, and so our restaurants are now able to operate at 25% capacity. A lot of those tents went down. That announcement was made, I believe, on Friday for a Sunday opening. On Saturday, the tents came down in a number of places, which is probably a good thing because that windstorm would have taken them down anyways that we had yesterday. Might have ended up in 29 Palms somewhere else.
Fortuitous time.
Along those lines, there's some new reopening guidelines that the company, the red tier, for example, some of our facilities that have been closed, like the museum, can reopen. So we're developing and reviewing those reopening plans. One of our concerns across all of our public-facing services is ensuring that staff feels comfortable. Obviously, we probably would feel more comfortable opening up en masse to the public once our staff has had the opportunity to obtain their vaccinations. I think we probably only have a handful of staff right now that meet the criteria established by the state for vaccinations. And so once that opens up and that's a little bit more widespread, I think we would be in a better place to give you some visibility on when all of our public-facing services will open. Along the same lines, user group requests are coming back to the town, whether it's Tri-Valley Little League, Morongo Basin Youth Soccer Association. Some of the other sport groups are inquiring and making reservations for field use, and so those programs seem to be moving up a little bit quicker than we had anticipated. So I think that's good news, get the kids out there. Lastly, we participated in a webinar today on federal stimulus round 4, whatever round we're up to now, this $1.9 trillion program. That is providing a good number of dollars to the town, individually to the town. So current estimate is about $4 million. It has some restrictions on it, on what you can use, what you can't use it for. There will be a number of policy conversations and guidance that, as we understand the program better, will be brought to you in the form of alternatives and recommendations for how those funds will be spent. So good news for the community for sure. I think there will be some opportunities that may not have existed prior to that allocation of funding. So I think that's it, Mayor. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to our council member comments. Councilmember Dennison.
Really no comments today. I want to follow up and ask the town manager, are there any follow-up vaccine events in Yucca Valley that have been scheduled?
So aside from this second one that is scheduled for April 2nd, which really is the second half of so that's really for those that have already been vaccinated in that first event. County staff has indicated that they are next interested in reaching some of what they deem hard-to-reach populations, and these might be facilities that they can go into, for example, our Dumosa Senior Village, to be able to go on-site and deliver some of the vaccines, with the understanding that as more retail establishments are opened up for filling in the vaccinations for the broader public. And so I think that's really their focus, is more the hard-to-reach ones. We still have the ongoing standing vaccination clinic at Copper Mountain College. And as those tiers are rolled back for more and more individuals to be eligible, that when we don't see any visibility yet on a closing date for that. I think right now they're looking even into late summer for that facility to remain open and fully servicing this community.
And still providing transportation options for?
We do. I don't know how many, Jessica, if we've even had anybody take advantage. We try and get that word out there. Are you aware of any?
I am not yet, but I can reach out to MBTA and find out. But we asked them to give us a bill at the end of the month, so we might get something at the end of this month. I'm not sure.
But we'll certainly put that on our social media platforms, like make sure that folks know that we can help them if they need a ride out there.
Yeah, it's just a nice way to get rid of a barrier if that is one for them. So that's it. Other than just thanks again always to our crews out there, taking care of our community, and the staff here for helping us move projects forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Drozd.
I just want to say about Clayton and Sue, we have the Sports Council meeting that I attended last week, and they always do that really professionally, and there were a few people there that really want to open up, and like Curtis said, youth soccer, and there are other sports that are anxious to open, and some are trying to open this spring, so we'll see what happens. And Jessica, thanks for the great presentation on solid waste. And I'm new to being on that committee, so I'm still learning about it, but thank you for all your hard work. And I want to let everybody know, I work at the college, and I'm a job developer, and that's one of the jobs I do. And right now there seems to be a lot of job openings in Joshua Tree and Yucca Valley. I don't know if it has to do with COVID. Maybe some people don't want to get out quite yet and be in public, but there are a lot of businesses reaching out. The one small business in Joshua Tree told me they needed 15 people. So there are quite a few. So if anybody is interested in a job, give me a call and I can give you some of my connections. But anyway, I'm just letting people know there are jobs out there, so go out and apply. And that's about it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Councilmember Lombardo.
Just want to acknowledge our Vietnam veterans on this day and thank them for what they went through on behalf of our country and for all of us, whether we realize it or not. And I do a lot of work for the base and the veterans that come back from the Iraq War and that sort of thing, and they all have symptoms, and the ones that I see, I do evaluations for their VA benefits and some of their dental work, and they go through an awful lot, and I think we all need to be aware of the fact that they've sacrificed for us in many ways, and we should just be appreciative of what they've done. Whether or not we agreed with what happened in Vietnam or the cause of the action, it was something that our country sent these people into, and they accepted that responsibility. So I think we need to acknowledge them and be thankful. Thanks to the staff of our town for helping things run smoothly, and I think we're making great progress even in this time of COVID and the shutdown, and I can't wait to get back to being open and taking off these masks and getting to greet people again like we used to. We have a very friendly town, and I want to see it get back on all cylinders again like it used to be. It'll never quite be the same, but I want it to be as close as it can be. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Schooler.
Well, I am also encouraged about things feeling like they're opening up and feeling like we're making some progress in that regard. The sports teams, youth sports teams, kind of activating again, that's a good thing. And I also, I'm encouraged by these projects coming up. The irrigation study, I think that's really important because our turf in this town is pretty much everybody's backyard. You know, the houses don't have turf, but the athletic turf and park turf that we have is important to the whole community. So I hope we can make some progress on that and keep it affordable, whatever we wind up doing. The Onaga Trail improvements, I think that's real important for our circulation through town, and I appreciate the work on that. Also, yeah, that's it. I just encourage that things are feeling like they're going forward right now, so appreciate that.
Very good, thank you. Again, I think Councilmember Lombardo made a point that this is a friendly town, and I would like us to remind ourselves just how uniquely different we are than maybe some of the places we've come from. I noticed a real difference when I moved up here from Orange County 30 years ago, and I would tell everybody they are so friendly in Yucca Valley. The people are so friendly, so welcoming. And I know there's a bit of pushback with all the tourists coming and people coming maybe and buying homes. I just ask that our community really think about continuing the friendly hometown atmosphere and change those people's attitudes and let them know that we can be different, we can be friendly, instead of being cold to those that are coming to visit and pushing them away and putting stickers on our cars saying, go back to LA. I just think it's, to me, that's just rude. That doesn't really represent a warm, friendly town that I know here in Yucca Valley. So I would just ask that you'd really consider that. Change their attitude as they come. Let them know that we do wave at each other, that we do welcome and say and talk to people in line and are friendly to approach. And for those people that work in our trades, our industries, those people that are the fast food workers, those that are at the grocery store and so forth, you're all our ambassadors. You're the ones who represent our town. When they come and get gas, or they come and grab groceries, or they come and get something to eat, how we treat them is a representation of what this town is about. So I want to thank you guys for being that friendly ambassador of the town of Yucca Valley, and continue to extend that to the guests that are here and welcome them. And then those people that tend to want to stay here or come here will catch our vibe and our spirit, and maybe we can change them from the inside out with that. So with that, we are going to call this a night. The next regular meeting of the town of Yucca Valley will be on Tuesday, April 6th at 6 p.m. right here in the Yucca Valley Community Center room. Have a good evening.